Imagine a world where the sun has been extinguished by a shroud of black soot, and the land is nothing more than a graveyard of charred timber. This was the reality 66 million years ago, a post-apocalyptic winter that seemed to mark the end of everything. You might see the remains of a triceratops resting on the frozen, desolate ground, a silent witness to a cataclysm that nearly erased life from our planet. This is the story of how the giants fell and how the survivors rose from the smoldering ruins to inherit the Earth. Before the darkness fell, your ancestors lived in a world of staggering abundance. In the Cretaceous period, life followed a rhythm that had lasted for 150 million years. You would have seen herds of Edmontosaurus tending to their nests, mother T-Rexes teaching their young the patient art of the hunt, and massive Alamosauruses grazing on the tops of pine trees. Even the oceans were a realm of giants, dominated by massive marine reptiles. But the course of history was about to be redirected by a mountain of rock tumbling through the void of space. An asteroid the size of Mount Everest struck our world at a staggering 100,000 kilometers per hour. The impact released the fury of 1 billion atomic bombs, vaporizing everything within 1,000 kilometers in an instant. The very crust of the Earth buckled, sending seismic shockwaves through the globe. Massive earthquakes triggered tsunamis that swept across entire continents, drowning even the largest creatures. Then, the debris ejected into space began to fall back, turning the atmosphere into a 400-degree furnace. In less than 2 hours, a firestorm enveloped the planet. The great reign of the dinosaurs, which had lasted for eons, was brought to a close in a single day. For years, the Earth remained a silent, barren wasteland. Yet, as the dust finally settled and the light returned, it became clear that life had not been entirely extinguished. Beneath the charred surface, survivors were beginning to stir. Insects emerged from their burrows to feed on the fallen. Snakes, tortoises, and amphibians found safety in the mud and the shadows. Among them were the mammals, small and squirrel-like, who found themselves in a world suddenly devoid of their greatest predators. But the mammals were not the only heirs to this new world. Protected within their own life support capsules, another group had endured, the avian dinosaurs. You know them today as the birds. While their tree-dwelling cousins had perished in the global inferno, a few ground-dwelling species managed to cling to life. These survivors were resilient, kept warm by feathers, and capable of walking and feeding themselves from the moment they hatched. They were the last remaining branch of the dinosaur family tree. And from these humble beginnings, a new dynasty was destined to rise. This journey toward the sky actually began long before the asteroid, in the Jurassic period. In a world of giants, being small required a different set of tools for survival. Consider a creature like Anchiornis. This small feathered dinosaur used its needle-sharp teeth to hunt insects, but it was also prey for larger predators. To escape, it evolved an extraordinary gift. By leaping from high cliffs and stretching out its feathered limbs, it could glide over the valleys like a kite. It was a small step for a dinosaur, but a massive leap for life on Earth. It was this mastery of the air that would eventually allow their descendants to thrive in the world after the impact. Today, you can see the echoes of this evolution in creatures like the flamingo. They have taken the ancient gliding skills of their ancestors and transformed them into powered flight, allowing them to travel vast distances in search of food. Their feathers, which once served only to keep dinosaurs warm, became specialized tools for aerial mastery. Their teeth were replaced by beaks, opening up entirely new diets and ways of life. However, the path to dominance was not easy. In the wake of the impact, global temperatures plummeted by 25 degrees. It took millions of years for the forests to return, but return they did. The seeds of giant redwoods survived the fire, eventually reaching over 100 meters into the sky. Within these new wintry woodlands, a new kind of predator emerged. The owls, armed with razor-sharp claws and silent flight, turned from mere survivors into the terrors of the night. For the small mammals living in the shadows, nowhere was safe from these aerial hunters. As the planet continued to heal, the tropics saw a massive explosion in the diversity of flowering plants. This vibrant new habitat created an opportunity for birds to specialize even further. Some, like the hummingbirds, evolved to become miniature, mastering the art of hovering to plunder nectar from flowers. You can see the perfection of this adaptation in the swordbill hummingbird, whose beak has become a specialized key, allowing it to reach food that no other creature can access. While some birds became small and agile, others on the plains of South America took a different path. 46 million years after the asteroid, ground-dwelling birds evolved into the deadliest predators the world had seen since the T-Rex. These were the terror birds. Standing 2.5 meters tall with heads like pickaxes, they sacrificed flight for raw power. They could sprint at 50 kilometers an hour using their massive beaks to strike down early mammals with the force of an axe. For millions of years, these avian giants dominated the open plains. But the story of the birds didn't end on land. While their dinosaur ancestors never truly conquered the oceans, the birds found a way. 15 million years ago, as shifting continents created vast shallow seas and coral reefs, seabirds like gannets began their aerial invasion. They became living missiles, diving into the waves at 90 kilometers an hour to compete with sharks for the ocean's bounty. Perhaps the most remarkable transformation occurred in the world's most remote corners. In places like the Galapagos, penguins repurposed their wings entirely. No longer used for flight in the air, their wings became paddles for flying through the water. As warm-blooded hunters, they possess a speed and agility that their cold-blooded reptile neighbors like the marine iguanas simply cannot match. From the ashes of a global catastrophe, the dinosaur legacy lives on in 10,000 different forms. Birds have reinvented themselves to conquer every corner of the planet, from the frozen poles to the deepest jungles. Yet the story of life is one of constant change. Even the mighty terror birds eventually met their match as other survivors, the mammals, grew larger and more dangerous. As the era of the great birds reached its peak, a new group of predators, the big cats, began to emerge from the shadows, signaling that the age of the mammals had finally arrived.